Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. Well, we've done it. We've hit the big 100 and we celebrate this milestone with the legend himself, the one, the only, Christopher Biggins. Celebrating 50 years performing pantomime, he tells me all about the most emotional Songsheet he's performed, the real reason he first got into pantomime, and why you should never use a catapult to fire sweets into an audience. So please, sit back and enjoy episode 100 of the Panto podcast. My guest for the 100th Panto podcast is, well, a man known by one name and one name only. It's the legendary Biggins. Hello, Christopher. How are you?
Very well indeed. How are you doing?
I'm great, and thank you for joining us for episode 100.
It's a pleasure. What an honour.
Well, the honour's all ours because I've been trying to get you, and then we had some horrible little lockdown thing happen.
I know.
But we're here. We're back, and episode 100. So
fantastic.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So, I normally ask people how they got started off in the business, but for you, it seems like you've always been in the business.
Well, I'm 72 years old, and I started in the business when I was 16 and a half years old. So I've been around a long time, done many things. Sometimes I read my CV and I can't believe what I've done. But anyway, I started... I went to my parents, who were very wonderful people and marvellously supportive. They sent me to a private school because my great auntie Vi, who was a terrible snob, insisted that I speak the Queen's English, because all my family talk like that because they come from Wiltshire. So my auntie Vi used to loathe it. So I went to, and I had a wonderful elocution mistress called Mrs. Christian. And she got me involved in theatre, and I did things like Gilpin Sullivan shows, like played Katisha in the Mikado, played the Pirate King in the Pirates of Penzance, and all sorts of things. And it was wonderful. I had a wonderful musical teacher who taught me the piano, and it was so bad that all I can play to this day is Daffodil Dell, very badly, because we used to just gossip. So when I left school at 16 and a half, I went to, luckily I lived in Salisbury, and Salisbury had a wonderful repertory company run by a really incredible man. I didn't realise how incredible he was till I went there. And I went, and when I was 16 and a half and left school, I went and I said to him, Mr. Salisbury, can I have a job? And he said, no, I talked properly. What am I talking about? I talked properly then because I had Mrs. Christian. Mr. Salberg, I said, I was just left school. Can I have a job? And he said, we're doing She Stoops to Conquer, so you can come for 2 weeks. Well, I went for 2 weeks and stayed for 2 years. And it was a wonderful company. And there were fabulous actors in the company. Robin Ellis, who invited my parents to a party, and they got a bit squiffy and went back and had my brother. And there's 18 years between myself and my brother. And that's because I was the only child up until then. So I blame Robin Ellis and my brother. And then we had Stephanie Cole, who saw something in me and was very encouraging. And she insisted I went to drama school. So she went to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. So I went there as well, and I had the best time of my life. I mean, Salisbury was wonderful, but Bristol was amazing. I mean, we had Ian Gelder, who was a wonderful actor, Tim Pickett-Smith, who's sadly no longer with us. What's the name of the wonderful actor who did Heidi High, played the governor?
Richard Cadell.
No, Simon Cadell.
Simon Cadell. Richard Cadell's Sooty.
That's right,
Yeah.
Simon Cadell. And Simon was... And then another person we had who I never thought was going to make much. He was the most lovely man. And we were very, very close. And I was his best man at his first wedding because he married one of the students. And so we had this big wedding. And I went on their honeymoon. And I sat in the back of their Citroen 2CV. We went to Spain. And when I got to Spain, I sat in the back, not realising that the sun could catch you, and burn you. And I arrived, I had to go to bed and they had to look after me for a week because I was sunburnt. Anyway, they married, and a year later they separated. So I had to go down and separate all the presents, and this is yours, this is mine. And I never thought he was going to make anything of himself, but he went on to win awards, Oscars, and his name was Jeremy Irons.
Goodness.
So it was a marvellous start to my career, was all of this. And then when I left drama school, I went to London. And I, during the seasons that I had at Salisbury, I met a wonderful actor called Jonathan Cecil and his wife Vivian Heilbronn, and they lived in a lovely house in Knightsbridge. And I went and lived with them, and so I was spoilt from very early on. Had a wonderful place to live, really comfortable. I think they charged me £2 a week or something, and I had 2 rooms in their house. I mean, I was so lucky. And then my career started. You know, I went to various different places to do rep, Derby, all over the place. Then I came to London with a children's show which was written by a man, once again I met at Salisbury Rep, called David Wood. Are you familiar with David Wood?
The name rings a bell.
David Wood is probably one of the... he wrote for children. He wrote the most wonderful children's shows. And the one I did for him was The Owl and the Pussycat Went to Sea. SEE ... And I played a bluebird in the first act, large bluebird, and I played the head jumbly in the second act. Now, as times were tough in those days because you didn't have that many actors in shows because it was too expensive. So you had to double up and do things. And so I played Bluebird, and which was lovely. We had all these dance routines and what have you. And then just before, about a half an hour before the interval, I went behind, we finished a number, and I went behind a bong tree, which was a cut-out bong tree. And I sat there for half an hour whilst they carried on with the action. And then the interval came after that, and I used to leave and get ready as my head jumbly. Well, I decided that, because we did morning shows, so I thought it was too early. So I used to sit behind the bong tree, a Times newspaper, and a cappuccino. And I would put that there. And then when I got behind the bong tree, I'd take my headdress off and sit there and have a coffee and read the paper. Until one day I went behind, and I must have been a little overexcited because the bong tree fell in the middle of the scene. And there was this large bluebird with no headdress on, drinking a coffee and reading the Times. And I got David Wood absolutely went bananas with me. So, but that's how I started. And then I think I was about 27 years old when great friends of mine, who became really good friends, but Jamie Phillips, who was a wonderful producer and a producer of pantomimes, and Dougie Squires, who was a fantastic director, and Peter Todd, who ran Darlington Civic Theatre. And they asked me to do, when I was about 26, 27 years old, they asked me to do a pantomime, Mother Goose in Darlington. And I said, no, I don't do pantomime. I'm a serious actor. I've just been with the RSC. I mean, I've done serious stuff. I don't do pantomime. And they kept on and on and on asking me. And I thought, no. And then eventually they mentioned money. So we're talking some time ago. And so they said, well, don't you want to earn some money? I said, well, what are you talking about, money? And they said, well, we pay, I think it was a 6 or 7 week season and rehearsals, and it was £1,000 a week. Well, it was an unbelievable amount of money. So I thought, well, I better do it. So I did it. And of course, I loved it. I mean, it was just fantastic. And Mother Goose, which for me is the ultimate pantomime for any pantomime dame. And of course, it's very rarely done nowadays. But it is wonderful. And I think I've done, in my career, I suppose I must have done about 6 or 7 Mother Gooses. And I've loved every one of them. And I was lucky enough to work with the greatest goose ever, Kay Lyle, who was just phenomenal. So she was a little old lady. I mean, she must have been 60 when I worked with her. And she had this wonderful skin. I mean, the goose was unbelievable. And it was like a dead piece of animal, sitting in the wings, or when she brought it in. And she'd get into it and it would come alive in front of your eyes. Talk about magic. It was just extraordinary. But she because she was bent over all the time inside, that's how she walked in real life. So she would come in, as a little old lady, and then she'd take she'd put a sort of dressing gown on, and she'd get inside this goose costume, and she would make Priscilla live. I mean, it was unbelievable. But in order for her to be comfortable, she didn't get out of the costume. She would sit in the costume, in the wings. Someone would take the headdress off so that she would breathe. And then people would not realise that she was in it and throw rubbish in it. So she'd have ice cream, cornets, and packaging and old crisp packets put on top of her. She didn't mind. She was wonderful, and she was a joy. And I worked with her, I think, about 3 or 4 times, because she was simply the best. I mean, she was just wonderful. And in those days, the animals like the cat in Dick Whittington and the cow in Jack and the Beanstalk, they were real stars. And if you were good, you had a career for the rest of your life. And certainly Kay Lyle was the best. I mean, Danny used to use her. Everybody, John Inman used to use her. She was phenomenal and such a lovely woman.
What was it then that changed your mind?
Well, initially the money. I mean, I can't.
Well, there's that. But what made you go kind of? Actually, this is fun.
Oh no, because it was just wonderful. I mean, when Dougie Squires was a wonderful director, and he made it such fun, and there were wonderful numbers and huge piece of choreography, and it was just joyous. The next time, I think, about 4 or 5 years later, I did a wonderful Mother Goose, funny enough, with Les Dennis, who I saw the other night in Hairspray. And we had dinner afterwards, and we got on very well when we did Mother Goose together. And he was fantastic, and we were reminded about the wonderful production that we had. I mean, when you do a pantomime, if you're the star of the show, you come on last. All the other the chorus come on, all the other characters come on, the animal comes on, and then the big come on is the dame, if you're starring in a pantomime. So I came on, and that's how it worked. But in this particular one that I did, it's Swansea, and it lasted for 3 months, the pantomime. And it's the longest pantomime I've ever done in my life. And we opened with "It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. La da dee da da." And so we were still singing this at Easter. So I said to the producer, "Can't we change it to 'It's beginning to look a lot like Easter'?" He said no. So that was me put in my place. So anyway, we continued to sing that. But he had me coming on in the pantomime. I was the first person. The curtain went up. It was a dark, dark set. And there was right from the back of the stage at the Swansea Grand came this woman in a black shawl and a little hair wig. Very insignificant. She just walked on, and she then came right to the front, and she started to tell the story. Well, I wasn't happy coming on right at the beginning of the show, but it was suggested that this is how it was going to go, and of course it was wonderful. And then at the end of Act 1, she died, and she went to heaven on a 35-foot width of a goose. And she sat on the top of this goose, and it flew off into the distance, whilst the whole cast on stage sang "We'll Keep a Welcome in the Hillside." There wasn't a dry eye in the place. It was extraordinary. I can't tell you. It was unbelievable. And then in the beginning of Act 2, the chorus came on. It did a big chorus number. Then I came on in a Joan Collins dynasty dress on a half moon, flew in very slowly, singing a song. And I come back as this beautiful Mother Goose. And of course, then everything gets told, and she doesn't like it being beautiful anymore. And then she goes back to the humble woman that she was to begin with. And it was just the most wonderful pantomime ever. Really fantastic.
You were thrown in the deep end then, weren't you? The Hamlet of Dames.
I know, the Hamlet of Dames. I mean, it was extraordinary. But I loved it, and I specifically loved that Mother Goose. It was I did another one at Cambridge, because I did. And interestingly enough, when I started my career as a pantomime dame, in Darlington I did 3 years in a row. Then I went to Brighton, and I did 3 years there in a row. Then I went to Cambridge and did 5 years in a row. And I quite liked that, because I think the public liked that. You know, it's like Berwick Kaler, who is for me is one of the great dames ever. And he's done so many years in York. It's not true. And but he's cultivated that audience. And the chocolate bar that he throws out, the wagon wheel.
Yes.
I mean, it's become synonymous with Berwick Kaler. And we would thought that wagon wheels and Berwick Kaler would go together. But they did, and he was brilliant. I mean, I've directed him as a straight actor in Shakespeare and things like that, but he was just wonderful. And he is a wonderful, wonderful dame. There's nobody quite like him, I think. And, to do... Is it 30-odd years he did?
He did 40.
40 years!
40 years, and then he's going to be back, hopefully this Christmas.
Yes. For Crossroads.
For Crossroads.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is fantastic. And, and that is what you call building up an audience, because they don't care what the pantomime is as long as they see him.
And the gang.
And the gang, yes, and the gang. But it's very simple. He doesn't go over the top. I'm more of a costume dame. I mean, every entrance, I usually have, what do I have? Usually have 15, 16 costumes. And so if I'm not on stage, I'm off stage changing into another costume. That's how I work it. Whereas Berwick barely has two, I don't think, but he's extraordinary. And he has a very nice little plain, almost grey wig. I mean, he's a real character. I mean, that's what he's developed, and everybody loves him.
It's the old Mother Riley style, isn't
Absolutely, that's a very good way, the old Mother Riley. But he's just brilliant. So, you hear that bird? Is it a seagull? There's a gag there somewhere. Anyway, so I was, brought into pantomime by some really professional people. I mean, Dougie Squires knew everything about pantomime, as did Jamie Phillips. And it was Jamie Phillips that actually taught me to come on in a different costume. God, it's very expensive. I mean, because dame costumes are hugely expensive to make and big. I mean, they're heavy. It's like wearing a mini car. I mean, there's nothing, and but I just love, and being big. I did a play years ago for the RSC called London Assurance, in which I played Jenks, and I had Judi Dench and Donald Sinden in the cast, Elizabeth Spriggs. It was a wonderful play, and I had a wonderful part. And the designer said to me, he said, "All I love about you is I love designing costumes for big people, because it looks marvellous. A big costume on someone big, it makes a statement." So I remember that, and that's what we do with pantomime. I'm always making a statement. And we've had some wonderful costumes over the years, things that have been really on the ball and mean something, and just make people laugh, which is good.
Do you keep any of them?
I used to keep them in the loft in this house, which I've had now, this house in Hackney, for about 35 years. And then it became stupid because I couldn't get into the loft because there were so many costumes. So then I decided, Jamie Phillips took them, and I used to, just use them. And now I don't keep anything, no. It's too complicated.
Because dames I've found over doing the podcast are terrible hoarders.
Yes.
Awful hoarders. Either that or props. Keeping props.
Yes, no, I'm not one of those people. I mean, I did keep them, but then I got to the point where I didn't have the space. So I decided, no, I would use a costumier. And I'm very keen on the hard wigs that we use, which I love. They're like hats. And you don't have to, I'm not the sort of person who wants to go and fiddle with their wig and make it look nice for this performance. I just want to plop it on like a hat. And it's wonderful. I mean, they're brilliant.
How did you approach being a dame then? Did you sort of borrow any mannerisms of people you knew or family? Or?
No, it was just literally, and I've said this before many times, it was just me as myself in a frock. And that was it. My personality came through and nothing else. I mean, and I think what is marvellous, when you go out in front of an audience which is full of children, what is wonderful is that there's a real range. Now, I've been in a theatre and gone out, and the first thing I've noticed is a woman breastfeeding a baby on her left titty in the front row. And you think, how can you get this? There's no other audience you could do that. So you're playing to a baby, the mother, who is probably 25, 30 years old, and her mother, who's in their 60s, sitting next. So that's quite a range of people. And that's what I think is so marvellous. And I think the joy is, and I think the joy that people like with me is that I am myself. So I'm just an extension of Biggins in a funny costume. And I think that is what helps. And I love, almost I would like to improvise the whole pantomime because I think it's just a fun thing. And, you get people laughing for the most absurd reasons. And also cry. I remember I was in Darlington for 3 years, as I told you. I think it was the third year I was there, and I was aware that on the front row there was a little boy who was about 6 or 7 years old, I suppose. And I can see him now, he had a little blue shirt on, little blue bow tie, and a blue V-neck sweater, and a pair of grey shorts. And he was his eyes were wide open, and he was there, and his mother kept whispering to him, and he laughed, and he screamed, and he shouted. It was unbelievable. So, of course, he was fodder for the Songsheet, which is my favourite thing in a pantomime, which slightly worries me with COVID now, because they're saying you can't sing or do anything like that with an audience. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, because that is my favourite bit. So anyway, I had this boy up with the other 7 children, as we had in those days. We can't have that many now, about 4. But he came up, and I kept him to the end. And he was just, everyone was looking at him as I was going along the line. And he was so funny, I can't tell you. He was brilliant. He had the whole audience, including myself, in stitches. So I kept him back. I gave him a special big present. And then I let him go. And then I ran off and did my quick change. When I went to the quick change, people in the audience, people in the wings, the actors, were all crying. And I thought, what's going on? I didn't understand. And I came on for the curtain call, and they were still crying. And I thought, this is very odd. Anyway, I did my curtain speech, and the little boy was there looking up adoringly, and his mother was, crying. I mean, it was unbelievable. So the curtain came down, and I said, what's the matter? And they said, you've no idea, but that little boy was totally blind. Oh. And it was the most extraordinary experience ever. I mean, because the joy that I had given this boy was extraordinary. And his mother wrote me, I've still got the letter, the most wonderful letter, saying that she'd never seen him react like this before. And it was a joy, and thank you so much. I mean, it was just incredible. I mean, it really makes me feel emotional now. But I mean, it was fantastic. That's what's so wonderful. You can grab the hearts of so many people. I remember I did one dame, and I used to have, because it's very important to have phrases, that you can. So I've done a lot of catchphrases. But one I had was I used to come on with a carrier bag, like a Marks and Spencer's or a Woolworths carrier bag and things like that. And I'd say, now, boys and girls, you probably notice I'm a bit on the plump side. Now, the reason for this is I'm always going into my carrier bag to get a sweetie. Now, when you see me do this, I want you all to shout out at the tops of your voices, naughty, naughty. So it was a wonderful catchphrase. But I didn't realise, of course, that when I had to go and get a prop from the bag, they would shout naughty, naughty. So, I had to cut back because they were so obedient, and the naughty, naughty was just wonderful. And so then I had, in the carrier bag, I had a catapult, and I used to fire a small packet of sweeties into the audience, and which they all loved. And one day I went for the upper circle, I think it was in Brighton. And there was a huge scream, which I didn't think anything of, and people laughed. And then I got a letter from a vicar saying that, dear Mr. Biggins, we came to see you in Pantomime in Brighton, and we loved it. We sat on the front row, and this large woman with a hat with chickens and a hen and little chickens and eggs in the hat came on and catapulted a packet of tunes which went up my mother's skirt and right into her what's-it. And she's never been the same since.
Did it make a tune?
Hysterical, absolutely hysterical. I mean, it is wonderful that you have that sort of reaction. I mean, it is just amazing. I mean, there's always something, and that I love that too. I love the fact that as the dame, we can have, or the comic as well too, you can have a rapport with the audience, which is marvellous. Of course, not everybody can do that because, of course, the pantomime would last 6 hours, which we can't have that. So it's bad enough to... but we do have a freedom there, which is wonderful.
That I was going to ask you that. Do you still get notes, or wouldn't they dare?
Oh, no. Yes, of course there are notes. And, sometimes very good, because you can get a little carried away.
I couldn't believe that.
And I think, it's good to have them. But I mean, I've done wonderful pantomimes. Like in Brighton, I think about it, I co-starred with Dora Bryan, which was such an honour, because she was a huge star. I mean, she was... I remember going to see her in Drury Lane do Hello, Dolly. I mean, she was extraordinary. And in fact, I had top billing over her in Brighton for the pantomime. And I said to Jamie Phillips, look, Jamie, I'm very unhappy with it. She's such a big star. I really feel that she should have top billing. And he said, no one knows who she is. So it was a shame. And I had to, anyway, it worked well. And then I had, in Brighton again, Irene Handel. Well, Irene Handel, I mean, my God, she was extraordinary. And every night I used to go into her dressing room, which was opposite me, to see how she was. And I'd sit on the sofa, and I'd invariably sit on a wet patch where her dog had peed. And every night I did a different position on the thing, but every night I found the wet patch. So one night I was doing the pantomime, which was, what did we do? It was Cinderella, so I played Buttons. And in fact, as Buttons, everyone said, this will be easy for you. You only have one costume. No. I had 15 costumes playing Buttons. Every time I entered, I had a different colour. So I started off blue, and I had a yellow one, a green one, an orange one. It was fantastic. So I had a different costume. And so one night I was on stage, and suddenly Irene Handel came on with the dog. And I went, yes. She said, hello, dear. Have you had a nice day? I said, yes, I've had a very nice day, thank you. What about you? Oh, yes, it's been lovely, she said. And she wasn't supposed to be on at all. She just popped on. And then she had the dog in her arms, and she gave me the dog and said, well, bye-bye, dear. See you later. So I'm left now on the stage with this dog and peeing all over me, and Irene's just come on. So I went, oh, it's a mirage. Brought the house down. I mean, she was fantastic. I mean, I just loved her. She was so marvellous, and a very clever actress. But it was bizarre. But it's very important to have a happy ship. You must really all get on well. And I mean, I've never ever been a pantomime day. Or in pantomime, I've never been one of those people who goes out every night. I can't do it. I haven't got the stamina. I put the whole effort into the show. So I go back to where I'm staying in a hotel or a flat or whatever, and the kids go out till 5 a.m. or something and come in.
Did you used to?
No, never.
Never.
I couldn't do it. I was too exhausted. I remember I've worked with a wonderful Paul Zerden, who I absolutely adore. And Paul and I have done 3 or 4 pantomimes together, and he's a real party goer. And he likes the ladies, so he would go out and he'd come into my dressing room after the following day. And he'd come and sit down, and I say, hello, you all right? Oh, I want to die. I went out till 4 a.m. I said, well, what's the matter with you? You're mad. Well, I fancied this girl, and I thought this would be my chance. And Oh dear, I feel dreadful. I said, well, it's your own fault. Get yourself together, go out there and be principal boy, or I'll be furious with you. So, but it is extraordinary, the atmosphere that's created in a pantomime. I mean, it is just wonderful. And over the years, it's changed a little bit. I mean, when I first started, I was lucky enough to have a principal boy as a girl, which I loved. And then the day came when producers said they can't do this anymore. They have to have a boy because they have to. And I sort of understood where they came from. But, I just loved a woman dressed in tights and beautiful legs and slapping her thighs and saying 12 o'clock and still no sign of Dick. And those were wonderful days. And, of course, the boys came along, took over. I'm not so keen about women playing the dame. I think that's taking it too far. I mean, and there have been quite a few who've done it, and I think not very successfully. I think you need to laugh at a man dressed in a frock. You can't laugh at a woman dressed in a frock. That's what women do. So I think it's a very ambiguous position to be in, and I think it's much better to have a man. But of course, nowadays, there's so many, the age we're living in is really sad because it's, you have to be politically correct, and you have to have a certain amount of black people, a certain amount of Chinese people, a certain amount of, which I think is sad because I think that the good old days, which I've seen and loved, of pantomime were just wonderful.
Have you got any favourite sons over the years?
Sons?
Sons.
Yes.
You mentioned Paul.
Paul is one of my favourites. Who else have I had over the years? Gosh, I'm just trying to think. I can't think of any now. But yes, I have. I mean, they've all been wonderful.
They'll be listening.
I know. Oh, thanks,
Mum,
thanks very
Mum.
much. Your old mum's getting senile.
I'm going to pull up a little list of who.
Oh yes, do.
Who you've had. As
if you pardon the expression.
Where are we? Well, Ricky J.
Well, Ricky J, of course, is who I spoke to today, of course.
I love Ricky. He's a really...
Ricky is absolutely fantastic. And I tell you what I like about Ricky. Because a lot of comedians, if you work with comedians, they tend to think that they can steal the show. And he rang me tonight, which I thought was unbelievable. Because he'd had an idea about a business, but he knew that I do my gags about, don't touch the plates, leave the plates alone, don't, all these running gags I put in. And his was a bit similar that he was going to use. And I said, well, I'm still going to use, I haven't thought what I'm going to use yet, but I'm going to say, oh, no, then I won't use it, don't worry. And I think that's wonderful when but most comics don't do that. Most comics just take advantage and just do things, and then and I'm not very good at telling people off or saying, look, I don't think you should use that because I feel that everyone should have their moment. But he's very sensitive and he's a terrific guy. He's brilliant.
When did you first go and actually see a panto then for the first time?
Right, I tell you exactly when. It was in Salisbury Rep. And I used to go when I was at school and see, I must have been about 10, I suppose, when I first saw the pantomime. And there was the manager of the theatre, as I said earlier, was Reggie Solberg. And there was an actor in the company who was also the director called Oliver Gordon, who was a very tall, thin man. And he was a director he directed all the plays, and he would direct you by saying, right, he said, Biggins, right, you can come on now, do your speech, and then piss off left. That was the direction. I mean, it was fantastic. And it was great. Exactly what you wanted to do. And you went and learnt the lines, and that was it. But he played the Dame every year, and he was wonderful. But he was so thin and tall and just looked hysterical, dressed up as a woman. And he was very physical. I remember him being a very physical Dame, and I just loved him. It was fantastic. And then, of course, I saw all the greats, Les Dawson. God, I'm just trying to think. Did we find any more of the boys?
Yes.
My sons.
We'll go back into that.
Oh, right, okay.
We'll go into that in a bit. So who else have you seen then? Who else?
Well, I mean,
John Inman.
John Inman, of course, who was absolutely brilliant, so fastidious, so, mannered, but wonderful, very clever, very clean. His costumes were immaculate. I mean, he was wonderful, really wonderful. I mean, I loved him. And then I remember going to the Palladium one year, and I saw who were the two the man and the woman who played husband and wife. He had a moustache.
Oh, George and Mildred.
George and Mildred.
Brian Murphy. And
That's
Luther
right.
Joyce.
And Luther Joyce. And they played the dames. They played Ugly Sisters. And Brian Murphy didn't cut off his moustache, which upset me so much, I can't tell you. And she was very good, I thought. She was excellent, Luther Joyce. So, I saw all those great dames over the years, and Wyn Calvin, who we talked about earlier. I mean, I saw him being wonderful. I mean, it was great. But dames worry me now because I think they are few and far between now, the great dames. And I'm not that keen on drag queens playing dames because I think that's wrong. I think the only thing that a drag queen can do, and they do it brilliantly, is Ugly Sisters. I think that works really well. But as far as being a traditional dame, I don't think it really works that well.
You like bloke in a frock.
I like bloke in a frock.
A bit of the old.
Yeah, exactly.
The old Les Dawson.
Les
What
Dawson.
about Barry Howard then? You haven't mentioned him.
Yes, Barry Howard I loved. I mean, I thought he was fantastic and such a nice man. No, they were. I mean, it's just I'm old. I can't think of anybody's name. I mean, they were all wonderful. They were all wonderful. There was nobody I didn't not like. I thought they were all fantastic.
Going back then to some of your sons over
Oh,
the
yes.
years. So we've got Ricky Jay, Billy Pierce.
Billy Pierce. He's dead. Is that the man from Newcastle?
Bradford's.
Oh, Bradford, that's right, yes. No, he's fine. I mean, I'm being a bit sarcastic now with Billy. I mean, Billy is... I think he was frightened of me, funny enough, because I went and I got second billing to him, obviously because he is Bradford. And but he's relentless. I mean, if he's not trying to make people laugh all the time, forget it. I mean, he's on stage constantly. He doesn't give anybody else another chance, but he is funny. And the audience, of course, love him. But I don't know how much longer he's going to last. And I don't know what he's going to do. I mean, I think COVID was a terrible year for him. He didn't do pantomime. He's married to a lovely, gorgeous woman, got a lovely son. No, I like him, but I think he was nervous of me because I was sort of old school, and I don't think he'd ever worked with anybody like that before.
Then you've got Ben Nicholas.
Ben Nicholas, I loved Ben Nicholas. How can I forget Ben? Ben is terrific, and we did several together. We did Nottingham, and we did somewhere else. But no, he's lovely, and he's great principal boy, really good. Any more?
I'm just looking through all the posters. So here we go. Let's have a look. Well, you've appeared with the Hoff.
Yes, but he wasn't principal boy.
No.
But the Hoff was somebody else. That was quite... I mean, I loved doing the Hoff. And I said to the producer, I have to play Pamela Anderson in a red swimsuit with big tits. And they said, no, you can't. It would be too upsetting for the Hoff. And I said, don't be so stupid. I'm sure you'd love it. So anyway, unbeknownst to them, I had the costume made, which was this swimsuit. And I wore it in the dress rehearsal. Well, he fell on the floor. He laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And everyone said, that's fine, we'll keep it in. So it worked really well. I mean, I liked him enormously. The only thing was, he was one of those actors that, what can I say about him? I mean, he had no professionalism at all. I mean, he would come, everybody gets into the theatre by the half, which is 35 minutes before the curtain goes up. And some people get there earlier, but, if you break that rule of if you don't go in 35 minutes or go 30 minutes or go 20 minutes before the half or 10 minutes, he used to turn up at the half. and he was playing Captain Hook, and he would throw his costume on. Sometimes he'd forget to put his beard or moustache on. And, he was lovely. I really liked him. He was a really nice man, but he didn't quite understand the professionalism that he was supposed to adhere to.
Do you like the old stage law and theatre law?
Oh yes, very much so. The principal, the villain must come on from stage left. Is it? Yes.
Yes.
And the fairy comes on stage right, and all those things are very important. You can't mess with that.
How was it then when you first did that pantomime, and the love that you got from that audience that very first time? Did you know you'd made the right decision?
Yeah.
Into Panto?
Yeah, it was extraordinary. I'll never forget it because, and also another one that I'll never forget is through Jamie Phillips again, who was Scottish. I went to do, for some unknown reason. No, it wasn't Jamie Phillips actually. It was Billy Differ, and for some unknown reason, Billy Differ asked me to go to Glasgow to do a pantomime, and I said, no, I don't think I'm going to do a pantomime this year. And of course, they always ask you to go in January when you finish the last pantomime for the following pantomime. So I said no, and he said, all right then. So then I rang Billy in the summer, and I said, what's the matter? You sound very low. He said, oh, don't. He said, the boy playing the principal boy, the comedy, not the principal boy, the comic, has been up for a sexual offence with young boys. He said, so we've had to get rid of him. And he was a big star in Glasgow. So he said, it's so depressing and it's all coming out. And in fact, the boy then committed suicide. So it was a double whammy. So I said to Billy, well, perhaps I should come and save the day and play the... He said, you wouldn't. I said, yes, I will. So I played the silly Billy character. And I remember vividly, it was a wonderful cast, Scottish cast, wonderful people. And then suddenly we were rehearsing and it all going very well. Then suddenly the first night loomed. And I thought to myself, I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm an Englishman in Scotland and I'm the only Englishman in this cast. They're going to hate me. It's going to be disaster. So I went out that first night in terror, absolute terror, and it was like a pop concert. I've never known a reaction like it. It was extraordinary. They screamed, they shouted, they cheered. I mean, it was extraordinary. And so that was a wonderful experience, which I hadn't thought about at the time when I accepted or I asked for the job. But it was a wonderful experience. And it was the same experience when I did my first pantomime. The audiences, if they like you, really do like you. And it is a wonderful, wonderful way of entertaining people. It's fantastic.
Because I think the first thing I ever saw you in was probably Porridge.
That's right, yes.
And you've always been popping up into TV shows.
Yeah.
And never been, please don't take this the wrong way, but never been the big star of the show, but you've always been there and you've always been a big kind of scene stealer.
Yes, yeah. I mean, that's my career, I think, really. So it's been wonderful. I mean, and I've had a marvellous time. And as I said to you earlier, I look at my CV sometimes, I think, my God, things I've done. And I've done things like played the sex-crazed vicar in Poldark, played Nero in I, Claudius, played a lot of villains, which I've loved doing in real theatre, and built myself a niche in pantomime, which has been fantastic.
Could you ever be a baddie in pantomime?
No. I couldn't bear to be booed.
Oh.
No. Sorry, you won't see me being booed. No.
Well, we were talking before we started recording, and I said it would be lovely to see you and Beric, two old friends together, as a pair of right catty, ugly sisters.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely idea, but I think it wouldn't work, and I don't think Beric would like it very much either, because I think you've got to be a double act, and that's why I think, funnily enough, a couple of drag queens are better, because they wear outrageous costumes, and through that they can be really bitchy and nasty. I remember once there was a double act of playing ugly sisters, and one didn't say a word. Now that would be my ideal part, not to say a word as the ugly sister and just nod or say no or downbeaten thing. But I mean, it's no. I would never play a villain. No, never.
I think you could be quite wicked.
I know I can be quite wicked. I mean, I've done, when I did Poldark, I was vile. I mean, my wife was pregnant, and I was told by the doctor not to keep having sex with her because I was too heavy. And my reply to that was, heavy? In disbelief. And then I put all my attentions onto her sister, played by Julie Dawn Cole. And Julie Dawn Cole was a fabulous girl. Well, and my wife was wonderful too, Jane Wymark. But Winston Graham, who wrote Poldark novels, wrote a wonderful character line for me, which was that I had to make love to Julie Dawn Cole's feet. So all week in rehearsals, she went to Dr. Scholl's to have her feet done. And then we went to Pebble Mill, and she was carried onto the set, placed in the bed, and then on action, there was a close-up of her foot, and on action, my tongue came between two of her toes. And that was the scene. And the head of the head of BBC at the time said, no way could he put this out on a Sunday night after Dad's Army, so they cut it.
Is there anything you've ever turned down that you wish you hadn't?
No, but there are things I wish I'd been asked to do. I would love to have played Prince Regent. Because I've got fantastic calves, and and the actor who did it, the series, had to have his calves padded, so I would have saved them a fortune in padded calves, and I would have loved to have played that part. But no, I've never really turned anything down. I'm sure I haven't. No, I'll do anything for money.
And of course, I'm a celebrity.
Yes, well, that changed my career, and especially my pantomime career. Funny enough, because. When I finished the pantomime, when I finished the Jungle, I'm Still Together, which I loved, every single moment. Of course, winning it was even more wonderful. I mean, to win it because the public voted for me was fantastic. So I was very lucky. When I did the Jungle, Michael Rose and David, his partner and director, offered me a starring role in the pantomime, because up until then I was always like second billing. Well, occasionally I was first billing at the beginning of my career, but it was, you had to be on television 500 times a day to get top billing. So they gave me top billing in Southampton, which was a huge theatre, and I played Silly Billy character, and my first entrance was being flown in my gear as a celebrity, get me out of here. On a parachute. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was extraordinary. And the audience used to go wild. I mean, it was fantastic. And my money went really up another notch. I mean, it was fantastic. I hate to keep on about money. I sound so, it's like a charlatan, but it was, it's nice to earn nice money.
You've got lovely taps.
I've got lovely taps, exactly.
I'll let the listeners know. We can't work out how to use the taps.
No, it is interesting, and how you can, but, I've been doing it now for pantomime for 50 years, I think it is. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Have you ever thought about writing?
Yes. Yes and no. I think writing is very personal, and I think you have to be, I'm a great admirer of people who can write, and perform as well, but I think it's quite difficult. I've just had 2 major operations, and I've just written an article for the Mail about those. So I can write articles and things like that, but it's a problem.
It's a discipline, isn't it?
It is a discipline, and I think I'm a bit lazy in a way. I quite like getting a script, and I can change things, which is nice, and suggest things.
And they listen, I guess.
And they listen, yes.
Well, so they should. You are Biggins.
I'm Biggins. Listen, I'm Biggins.
Well, that's the thing. There's certain people in this country who are known by one name.
Yeah.
Brucey, Scylla.
Yeah. Biggins.
Biggins.
So I saw Scylla do pantomime. She was wonderful. She was, because she, again, she just loved the audience. So she really, and she loved to laugh. And she laughed all the time. God knows if we'd done pantomime together, I don't know whether we'd coped. But we did a lot of wonderful things. I mean, when I did Surprise with her, we did the first 6 shows live, and they were hysterical. And one show, we had a man who wanted to propose to his girlfriend in marriage. And she sat next to me. She sat next to me, and he sat next to Scylla. So they were talking. Didn't say anything. He was in a very funny mood. Anyway, Scylla said, "Well, go across." And so he came across to us too, and knelt in front of us, and said, "Louise, whatever her name was, will you marry me?" And she looked at him and went, "No." And remember, it's a live show. And I said, "Oh, go on." And Scylla said, "Oh, please." And nothing. She wouldn't marry him. Quite right. He was an absolute arsehole. So the last person you married was him. But anyway, we did this. And then another show, we were relying on Tower Bridge to go up. And Tower Bridge didn't go up. So we were 8 minutes under. And Scylla used to go and sing a song at the end of the show. But she didn't know we were 8 minutes under. So Alan Boyd, the producer, came to me and said, "Look," he said, "we're 8 minutes. You've got to go in and get her at the end of the song and take her back to the sofa and talk for 8 minutes." And I thought, "Oh, this is wonderful. I love live television. It was wonderful." So I went and picked her up. Her face was horrified. And then when I did get her back to the sofa, we just laughed and talked about various things. It was wonderful.
And you've worked with so many of the greats as well, not just in pantomime, but also.
Yeah, I have. I've been very lucky. I mean, to work when I was very young on London Assurance at the RSC, where I played a wonderful character called Jenks, and to work with Judi Dench, Elizabeth Spriggs, Donald Sinden, Michael Williams, Barry Ingham. I mean, they were wonderful halcyon days. I mean, I couldn't really believe that there's this little boy from Salisbury, was on the stage with all these fantastic actors who were just wonderful. I remember, because I was the youngest, I always used to collect for people leaving, if they were leaving. And Judi Dench was eventually left the show. And Sinead Cusack took over, who was a great friend of mine, who I introduced to Jeremy Irons, and they got married, and they're still married. But anyway, so I went to Donald Sinden the day that she was leaving, on the Saturday night, and I said, "Donald, Judy's leaving tonight." He said, yes. And I said, "Will you present her presents I bought, which we've all collected?" He said, "I'd love to, dear boy." He said, "But I've got someone in tonight, and I'm going to tell you who it is, but I want you not to say a word. Do you think this person might be better?" Well, when he told me, I just couldn't believe it. So I said, "Yes, I think it might be quite better." So we did the show, and everyone went down to Donald's dressing room, and I gave the nod to Donald, and Donald said, "Well," he said, "we're very sad that Judy is leaving, but these things happen, and we've collected for you a present, and I got someone very special to give it to you." And out of his toilet, his bathroom, which was in his dressing room, came Princess Grace of Monaco. So Grace Kelly presented Judy with her. I mean, Judy fell on the floor. I mean, it was just wonderful, absolutely marvellous. So there's been so many wonderful things. I mean, our business is fantastic. It's joyous. It's glorious. It has its ups and its downs, but there are more ups than there are downs.
And I found out the other week I've got competition with my podcast because you brought out a podcast.
I have, yes. I not kiss and tell. What's it called? Tell and I forgot what it's called. But anyway, it's very interesting. What we do is it's a great idea, which people came to me with. It's just two of us, me and a guest. And the guest has to bring 3 important things in their lives. It can be anything. And I bring one. And we talk about these 4 things during the program. The program is about an hour. And it's just fantastic. And we've had some wonderful objects. We've had some wonderful people. I mean, currently on at the moment is Helen Worth, who is fantastic. We've got Michael Gove coming up. We've got Gloria Hunniford, who is coming on, she's done it. Really marvellous people. And I rang everybody and said, look, will you do it? And everybody said yes, which I thought was a great testament to me. And I'm thrilled, and it's been going really well. So yes, get another microphone.
How do you find it then? Podcasting.
I loved it. I love it. I absolutely love it. I find it fascinating, and I love the fact that we talk and we can talk about anything. As long as it revolves around these various things. So it's good. I think it'll make a very good television, and I'm hoping that we might be able to sell it as a television. Because at the moment, you don't see the objects. We have to describe them, what they are. But we've had some fantastic things, and it's been really good, and I've really enjoyed it. I like chatting with people. And
what have been the things then that you've brought on?
Well, I bought it because I have you haven't looked really around the house now, but I've been collecting. Not only have I been doing pantomime for nearly 50 years, I've been collecting art, and we don't know the word wallpaper in our house. It's just wall-to-wall paintings, and if I hadn't been an actor, I'd have been an art dealer. I love art, so that's one of the things. When we had Don Black, who was fantastic, and I've known Don for years and years and years, and his lovely wife, who's sadly no longer with us, and he was great, and I brought in that particular one. Cilla Black gave me a mask of this very 20s, 30s woman, which was a lovely piece of china, which I have on my bedroom wall. So that was what I bought in for that. So it is fascinating. I usually bring paintings or books or something that, I've really loved all my life, and it means something to me.
What kind of art are you into then?
A very eclectic taste. Very eclectic. I mean, I've got... because the drawing room of this house is the ground floor is the ground floor and the first floor is that there's the ground floor and the first floor are a minstrel's gallery, and so we've got the room is double height, and so we've got a huge, which I bought in funny enough in Belfast, wonderful painting of an Elizabethan woman in a full dress, which I think is about 15 foot high. And so because we got this space, it's wonderful to have.
Do you keep your Panto posters?
I do. I've got them all on the what I call the bad taste landing upstairs. So they're all up there, which is good.
And they make you smile. Does the art make you smile?
Oh, the art makes me really smile. And also, you forget about certain bits of art, and then suddenly you're sitting in a different seat, or you're aware of something else, and you just look and think, oh, God, that's wonderful. I mean, I'm looking now through the kitchen to the hallway, and there's a wonderful Hockney print of a poster of a ballet at an opera at the Metropolitan in New York, which I love. And, it's fascinating. And sculptures I love. I've got lovely bronzes. No, I've collected some lovely things over the years.
Have you ever tried your own hand at painting?
No. I mean, I'm not good enough. I mean, no. I think, art is something really special, and I'm really envious of people who paint.
I'm with you there.
Yeah.
Beryl Cook for me.
Yeah,
very
wonderful.
funny, silly, and Donald McGill postcards. That's something else I like.
I went to Plymouth, where she comes from, and I was very excited that she lived in Plymouth. And I wrote to her, and she wouldn't see me. So I was really upset. And I've got, what have I got? 3 original Beryl Cooks upstairs.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it was a shame. I was very disappointed. I mean, apparently she's very shy. I wonder if she's still alive.
Passed a few years
Oh, did
ago.
she? But I agree. I love her work. Fantastic.
Something that you used to be on very, very often was Give Us a Clue.
Yeah, well, I've tried desperately to bring Give Us a Clue back and host it, but they don't. Nobody, the people who own it don't want to know. It's great shame, because I think Give Us a Clue was a wonderful show.
Silly parlour game.
I know,
Wasn't it?
and I did more. I think myself and the comic who had that huge dog,
Bernie Winters.
Bernie Winters, we did more than anybody else as guesting on it.
Because as I said, whenever you switch on the TV, you were there.
Yeah.
You're still there probably this week on an episode
Oh,
of
I
Orange.
know.
Or Rent-A-Ghost is now on BritBox and things.
On Safari.
On Safari and
things like that.
So what would be your advice then for any form of pantomime performers, not just dames?
Well, I think, it is now considered to be a very serious profession. And I think if you enjoy the lighter side of our business, if you enjoy singing and dancing, and you enjoy being funny and comedy, go for it. Because we need you. We need more and more people to be in pantomimes and to keep it alive. And so it is important. And I think that you should do as much as you can to keep in with it. And it's a marvellous form. I'd hate to see it not appear anymore, because it is so wonderful. And it appeals to such a huge age group. And I think that would be sad to lose, the fact that, so many different ages can really appreciate it and love it and enjoy it and laugh at it and cry at it. I mean, it's a wonderful job.
This leads me on to my last question. I'd like you to tell me your dream pantomime, so you can be in it, or you can be in the stalls watching it. You can choose the venue, the production, and the cast can be alive or dead or a mixture of both.
Well, first of all, the venue would be the London Palladium, which I think is the greatest. I've never done a pantomime at London Palladium, but I did do Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, which I loved, and it is a great, great theatre. Every night when I did Chitty, I used to sit, or rather stand, waiting to go on behind the curtain and and the orchestra started up, and I used to think of Judy Garland sitting on that stage with the curtain down, the orchestra building up, and I used to think of Judy Garland sitting on the stage, as she did many, many times, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So, that was... In fact, I think I'd like her to be Principal Boy. We can have dead or alive, can't we? Yes, I think so. I think Judy Garland... What?
You're the boss.
I'm the boss, right. So I'd have Judy Garland. I'd love, I think, to have the simple Simon character would be wonderful, played by Dick Van Dyke. Because I think Dick Van Dyke is an incredible performer, was an incredible performer. I'd like the fairy godmother to be played by none other than the Queen Elizabeth II, our great queen, who I think she'd be wonderful, and she'd bring a marvellous touch of royalty to the proceedings.
She's performed Panto.
I know. I went the other day, I was at a place in Windsor, and I went to have lunch with Sue Holderness and her husband, who used to run the theatre, and he directs those pantomimes for the Queen. So he's actually directed the Queen in those pantomimes. Good. But I think, I think Margaret was the one who was the real star. But the Queen, I just think she is fantastic. So I would definitely have to have the Queen. Who else would I have? The villain. Who I have as the villain? I think I'd probably have to have Boris. I think he'd be rather good as the villain. I mean, and he's got that mane of hair, and he could waffle on for hours and hours and hours, and we wouldn't be any the wiser at the end of it. And then who else? What else do we have? So we're doing Cinderella, aren't we? Ugly Sisters. Ugly Sisters. Oh, all right then. Beric Kaler and myself, we play the Ugly Sisters. Yes. Just to please you.
Thank you.
And who else is there in that pantomime Cinderella? I think that's about it, really. And we have a wonderful chorus from the E&O, the English National Opera, and the ballet too. So we'd have a very classy chorus.
And a big old band.
Oh my God, huge. 200 pieces.
Well, Christopher, thank you so much for helping me celebrate the 100th episode of the Panto podcast.
It's my pleasure and my honour, and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.